I wanted to make a video speaking a little bit about selfishness, about being excessively self centered, and the way that kind of warps our perception of reality. Onision is a case study in this, but so too is my own father. In two important respects, Onision's mentality, his way of thinking, his way of living, really does remind me of my father. For one thing, Onision is constantly lying. He's constantly being manipulative and deceptive. But he perceives himself as being honest. And there's a sense in which he's being as honest with you as he can be, which is really pathetic. It's really tragic to behold. And that's what my father was like his whole life. And not just about sex and his sex life, about politics, about his professional life, about everything. And you could corner my father into telling the truth. You could kind of take an hour and point out to him the contradictions in what he was saying and put him in check and explain. But it was such a counterproductive effort because if you then talk to him just a few days later, he'd be back to deceiving himself on the same issue. And he'd be back to trying to deceive you on the same issue too, as if you could be deceived, when he'd figured this stuff out. And after he discredited himself, Onision and my father both, they were men who utterly lived a lie at all times. And for that reason, they're not even really aware of the way in which they're deceiving you when they're in that act of manipulation. I think this is rooted in selfishness. It seems shockingly honest. It seems jarringly honest when Onision comes on camera and admits to you that he had an anal sex only relationship with this teenage girl, age 18, age 19. So he was having vaginal sex with his wife, and he was having anal sex only with this 18 and 19-year-old. He just states this to you. Of course, there's a sense in which it's just mind-blowing. Like, why wouldn't you just omit that from the view? Why wouldn't you just not mention that? It's so damning. It's just so disorienting. It's unbelievable that he would admit that. And maybe some people respond to that disclosure by then imagining everything Onision is saying is tremendously honest in the same way, because there's this one detail in there that's shockingly honest. Okay, I admit that was not the only detail that shocked me. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm easily shocked. But of course, that one detail, it in itself is very deceptive and manipulative in the following way. He presents this to you as if it were the most natural thing in the world, that his wife made him promise not to have vaginal sex with this girl. His wife made him promise not to have oral sex with this girl. And he and the girl were going to meet up, spend a week together without his wife. They were going to spend some time together alone. This is presented to you with absolutely no irony by Onision, as if this were his wife giving positive consent for him to have anal sex with this girl. Obviously what he did was to cynically and dishonestly interpret his wife telling him not to have sex with her, his wife forcing him to promise not to have sex with her. He interpreted this as if it were positive permission for him to have anal sex with this girl. Like the fact that he made a promise not to have vaginal or oral sex with her, as if, as if therefore his wife has no problem with him having anal sex with her. And the depth of the selfishness is shown in that there's no consideration given whatsoever to what this means to his wife. Like, how is his wife going to feel about it when she finds out that he met up with this girl and he obeyed the letter of the law but not the spirit of the law, that they had anal sex only, no vaginal sex? Like, do you think she's going to be happy, Greg? Do you think she's going to be happy, James? Do you think she's going to be happy, Onision? I don't know what name to call him. Do you think she's going to be happy? Like, oh, good for you. I'm so glad you kept up your side of the bargain. I'm so glad you lived up to your side of the deal. Obviously, she's going to be shocked and horrified and disoriented to learn this. And there's also no thought given whatsoever to what it meant to the 18 or 19-year-old girl. And depending on which side of the story you believe, which version of the story you believe, I should say, she may or may not have lost her virginity with Onision, but it was explicit that this was her first experience with anal sex. Okay, so Onision, you're saying under these circumstances she agreed to this. Even if we treat that as true, why is he so utterly lacking in sympathy for the other side, where he thinks through why she agreed to this, what this meant to her? Do we really live in a world where, oh yeah, that makes sense. So he has vaginal sex with his wife, and then he cheats on her with this 18, 19-year-old girl, but that's anal sex only, so that's okay. It's just surreal. It doesn't even sound like a plot someone would come up with for a pornographic film, But he's so selfish, he's so self-centered, that this doesn't just lead him to manipulate others. It also makes him very easily manipulated by others. And again, this is really strikingly similar to my father. My father, he was lying to other people all the time, but he was so easily lied to. He was so easily deceived by lies. He was so incapable of figuring out that other people were lying, because he would never ask himself the question, why is this person telling me this? What motivates them? Why do they want me to know this? Why do they want me to think this way? Or what are they trying to make me feel? What are they trying to make me do? And if you're not excessively selfish, you think that all the time. Without even making an effort to compute through that step by step. All the time you're just being sensitive and thinking, okay, if I tell this to this person, how are they going to feel about it? What are they going to assume about my motivations? Why am I telling them this? You might examine your own motivations. Why am I motivated to tell this person this? And, you think about both sides in an analytical way. And, you may be sensitive or you may be insensitive, but you're still thinking about it. You're still analyzing it. Extremely selfish people, excessively self-centered people, those thoughts don't even occur to them. They treat the things other people tell them as a kind of unbelievably simplistic fact. And then they expect others to likewise be so uncritical and credulous and trusting in just taking on board whatever they tell them, as a simple fact. Part of the tragedy of the story Onision has now burdened us all with is that it's obvious all these women are lying to him and manipulating him at every stage of the story. This does not make Onision a good guy. In case you don't get, I really don't sympathize with this position. I really don't. It's not merely that I disapprove of him. I really do. I really do heap scorn and criticism of the guy. Nevertheless, at every stage of the story, Kai is lying to him. Lainey is lying to him. Lainey is manipulating him. And it just doesn't even occur to him that he's being manipulated, right? At one stage, Kai is telling him that she's bisexual and completely fine with bringing another woman into their life. The woman, in this case Billy, comes in. And simply because she's jealous that he's kissing her too much, I think this is before any of them had sex, she threatens divorce. She doesn't just threaten divorce. She gets a lawyer and serves him with paperwork and moves into another apartment. There's this whole calamity. The extent to which she's bossing him around, she brings this other woman into their lives. This is the more recent woman, Sarah, age 18 and 19 is when it happens. And she then decides that she's only interested in monogamy with Greg. So she actually doesn't describe this as her becoming heterosexual. She decides that she's gay because she considers herself a man, but she only wants to be in a monogamous relationship with another man, i.e. Greg, whereas she originally identified as a heterosexual female and then as a bisexual female. This went through phases within the period of time. There are such obvious elements of manipulation here. His former relationship with Shiloh, fake illnesses. At every stage, she's lying to him and manipulating him. Most obviously and demonstrably with imaginary illnesses that she's making up to manipulate him. All of these women, and even including Sarah, they are telling Onision at different stages what they think he wants to hear in order to get him to do a specific thing, in order to achieve a specific outcome. And he receives all this information completely guilelessly, in a completely unsophisticated way. And I think it is because he is, so extremely self-centered, so extremely selfish, that it entails a kind of dehumanization of the other people in his life. Now, I don't think Onision is insane. I feel strange saying that, because I do consider my own father to have been insane. I really do. In my father's case, I lived with my father for so many years. I observed him for so many years. But this kind of extreme selfishness, I think probably if you can remember your early childhood, I think probably it's a stage most of us go through that we evolve out of. It's fundamentally just a very simple-minded, childish way of dealing with the world. It's not really that you have an excessive interest in your own pleasure, in your own enjoyment, in the pursuit of your own ends. It's that you're utterly failing to go through the process of thinking about other people's perspective. Just thinking, okay, if I do this, what is my wife going to think of me 6 months from now? What is this teenager, Sarah, going to think of me 6 months? What are going to be the knock-on consequences? How is this going to be for her? Again, why is she motivated to say the things she says to me? What are the outcomes? I think you can be powerfully motivated by your own self-interest and yet be considerate towards other people's interest, and yet have a kind of detached and analytical view of what your actions mean for other people, what the impacts are going to be for them. Very simply, you can be selfish and at the same time caring and considerate towards others. I think, what Onision gives us is a case study of just how bizarre the outcomes are when people pursue their own self-interest in the total absence of that kind of consideration. And part of the outcome is that while he is lying to and manipulating others, he is himself unbelievably easily manipulated.